G'day, Professor Joseph Drew here. What I really like is when people write to me and contact me and give me nice feedback and pose questions and topics for future videos. And recently, a kind young gentleman from Pakistan wrote to me and asked me to do a video on basic essay structure. So here it is. Okay, there's lots of words in this video and it's unavoidable. I want to get through a lot of material really quickly. In this first slide, I'm talking about the absolute basics. Most of it you already know. In the slides that follow, I'll probably reiterate or bring up some points that you haven't thought of before. Now, this is based on doing essays myself. I was a university medalist, GPA of 7 out of 7 in every subject I ever took from university. In my master's, I did a PhD, of course. I mark lots and lots of essays from students. I have my own kids who are doing essays at schools, and I was once a school teacher. So all these experiences have led me to propose these things as the crucial ingredients. So first of all, make sure you have a proper introduction. It's only a paragraph or so. Tell readers exactly what you propose to do. Pose the question you intend on answering, or make a contentious statement that you intend on exploring. Make sure there is an intro. It's amazing how many people hand things into me without introduction. And particularly in this first paragraph, give people a reason to read the essay. You're making them want to read further. And if you don't make them want to read further, the chances are they won't. Now, one mistake I see all the time is when people include the results or the findings in the introduction or the abstract. Big mistake. If you tell them what your conclusion is right at the beginning, why would they bother reading further? Okay, next thing. Next section is explaining the relevant theory or the relevant facts and making sure you get that right and you cite it properly. The next section is applying that theory and facts to the particular context, the particular case that you're writing about. It's amazing how many people don't apply theory. They just give me their opinion. Well, your opinion, I'm afraid, is valuable to you, but probably not to anyone else. Theory and facts are what will persuade me to come across to your point of view. You need to be applying the theory and the facts that you mentioned earlier to your particular context. And have a conclusion. Actually start that last paragraph with "in conclusion" or "in summary," so that people are really, really sure and under no misconceptions about what you're trying to do. You're trying to conclude. In the conclusion, don't just restate what you've already said before. There's nothing worse than reading that. Like, your reader's not thick. You've already said what you said. You don't have to keep saying it over and over and over again. What you want to do is highlight the most interesting or unexpected ideas or findings that you came across. You might like to suggest areas for future work to extend this. And it's really, really important, that very last sentence, that it's a pithy, clever sentence that sticks into people's head. Often has something to do with your title or your first sentence, and that brings it all the way full circle back. But that last sentence is so important. That's what people are going to remember when they're writing down your mark, when they're thinking about your paper. Okay, so some of these things I've covered in other videos, and I encourage you to watch them, particularly the planning videos. But here's a list of some do's, and then I'll give you some don'ts. So, do let your reader know what's happening. After the introduction paragraph, it's often useful to say, look, I'll first talk about such and such theory. I'll then explain the context in Pakistan or wherever. I'll then draw some conclusions from applying that theory and state some areas for future research. Something like that, so people know what's happening and what order it's going to happen in. If people have an idea of what's happening, they're better prepared for it. They've got their mind in the right place and they can concentrate on what you're saying. Plan. As I say, I've got lots of videos on this. I can't overemphasize planning. Lots of academics don't plan well. Most students don't. You should spend at least as much time planning as writing. That's what I do. do all the time. I typically spend about a week planning an essay. I typically spend about 4 days writing it. The proof is in the planning, just like cooking or anything else. Don't skip that step. It's really obvious when people do. I know for myself, when I started doing my really intricate planning style, which I started about 6 years ago, I started getting the absolute best journals overseas. Now, I myself didn't change. The topics I was writing about didn't change. The only thing that really changed was the planning. So that's how powerful it is. Use segues. People don't. At the end of each paragraph, wherever possible, it's not always possible, but wherever possible, at the end of the paragraph, have a sentence that gives the people a reason to go to the next paragraph. You've got to keep the person moving along through your essay. So they're called segues. Have a reason to move to the next paragraph. And that's at the very last sentence of each previous paragraph. Be kind to your reader. You're not there to regurgitate a dictionary and use great big words that you don't even know how to use correctly. That's really, really tiresome. The only time I see that in academic writing is with new academics, often with PhD students, that feel they have to sound super intelligent to impress me or someone else. You look at the greats, you look at Ronald Coase, you look at Albert Hirschman, people like that. They mostly have really short sentences, really simple words. Occasionally they'll use a big word when they're sure about the context to let you know that they are smart, but most of the time it's really simple language, and that's easy to read. Have you ever picked up one of those papers by one of those tryhards that managed to get published, and every second word you've got to look up your dictionary? It's really, really painful to read. No one wants to read it. You want the person reading your essay to keep going, to keep reading. So don't go and try out all the new words in your thesaurus. Use simple words, short sentences. And the next point is group similar ideas together. This is another classic mistake I see in papers I'm reviewing or marking. People jump from one idea to another. Put all the similar ideas together in the one paragraph. Exhaust that theme entirely before you move to the next paragraph. That's covered in my planning videos. Really, really important. And usually you only want to present one idea per sentence. Okay? And in your paragraph, it should be on the one theme. So they're the do's. Now some don'ts. These are the things I see all the time which drive me crazy. So don't do it to whoever's marking your essay. Don't provide all the answers, all the results in that very first paragraph. If you've told me everything important you're going to find out, why would I bother reading further? And now you'll notice I've said that twice. That's because it's like really, really, really important, so please don't do that. Don't merely repeat in your conclusion things that you said in the body of your essay. Highlight them perhaps, put a slightly different spin on them, say how important they are and why, but don't just repeat it. As I said previously, I did this, I found this. Well, I've already read it. Why are you telling me again? It's really annoying, and it's a waste of that last conclusion paragraph. That last concluding paragraph is where you're hitting the reader with all your brilliant insights and your ideas about how those could be developed further in future work, and the significance of what you found compared to other people and other work. That's where you're hitting them with all those brilliant ideas in that last paragraph. That's what they're going to take away with them and remember and give you a good mark for. Don't go wasting it just repeating sentences you've already written. Don't use synonyms inappropriately. I see it all the time, particularly in my field, local governments. I see people calling local governments councils. They're two completely different things. The council is the council laws and the general manager and the directors. The local government is the whole organisation or local government assets. They're not synonyms. Often people think words are synonyms and they're not. Don't rely on your thesaurus. Make sure you use the words carefully. Don't bore your reader. Don't go on great big long explanations of something that's tangential or a side issue. You're not there to bore them. You're there to keep them interested, keep them wanting to read further. Remember that. Too many people seem to think that they don't have to put any effort into keeping the reader's attention and keeping the reader wanting more. You do. You're there to sell your work. Your introduction sells your work principally, but throughout the essay you've got to keep selling it. This is why you're going to read more. Make it interesting, make it lively. Have those segues to make people want to get to that next paragraph. Keep them wanting more. Remember, you're selling your ideas. It's not good enough just to have a good idea. That's a lesson I learned early on in my university career. It doesn't matter how good your idea is, that's not enough. You've got to sell that idea. Don't try to do too much. Don't try to tackle too many themes in the one essay, particularly if you've got a short word length. That's a real typical mistake I see. Everyone, people trying to discuss all the pertinent theories instead of just the main ones. What happens if you discuss, 10 theories instead of just the main one or two? Well, you don't do any of them properly. You run out of word count and you confuse your reader. So don't try to do too much. That's a mistake I make sometimes in papers. I try to do too much. I try to be too clever. I try to link two really disparate theories or maybe three theories together or reference from a whole heap of disciplines together. And it's just too much for the reviewers. They don't know enough. They don't have broad enough knowledge. They can't concentrate enough on all those different things. And you get rejected for something little. Don't try to do too much. And don't forget to read over your work at the end. That's a classic mistake too. Now, if your essay is not a live essay where you're doing it under examination conditions, well then what I would suggest is what I always do. I finish a paper, I leave it at the very least for 3 days. After 3 days, I print it up in a different font, because you'll notice things in a different font that you didn't notice in the previous font. And I read it out loud. And I notice all sorts of things I didn't notice previously. That space of time makes you read it with fresh eyes and notice things that you wouldn't otherwise notice. So I hope my friend from Pakistan found that helpful. Don't forget to subscribe. I do this in my own time with my own resources. And all I ask for in return is some subscriptions. So thank you very much for your time. Good luck in your essay. And best wishes. Goodbye.